up in Wichita, and then I actually lived in Fredonia for 8 years, and I taught at Altoona Midway, right down the road, for 8 years. So I feel like I'm among family with teachers in Southeast Kansas. I'm just grateful to be back. Get up my slides. Okay, so it's perfect that we're honoring teachers this morning. I entitled my message Gardening 101 because we're out in Southeast Kansas, and if you're not a farmer, you probably have a garden, or you know someone who does, and everyone has some connection to farming around here. First, I'll tell you how I got to be a missionary, because like I said, I was a teacher for 10 years, and then God called me to missions. It started when I was 9 years old. I was in my prims class. We did missionettes back in the day, and Becky Hoshaw was a missionary to Honduras, and she spoke to my prims class, and God spoke to my heart that I was going to be a missionary, and I was so excited. I went home and I told my parents. My best friend, I was talking to her a little while back. She's like, "Oh yeah, I remember. I was so jealous that you were going to be a missionary to Honduras." So I don't remember what I must have told her and everyone. But then I grew up, and I started looking around me and thinking, I don't know if I was really called. I started doubting my call because I was a shy, introverted little girl. And by the time I got to high school, I went to Week State every year, and I went to the special meeting they have for anyone that's called in the ministry. And I remember sitting there looking around and saying, "Nope, I don't think I was called. I don't fit the mold of a missionary, of someone, or even someone supposed to be in ministry. I'm not an extrovert. I won't stand up on my lunchroom table and start preaching Jesus." I thought that's what missionaries, like that's how you started, right? Is you started preaching on tables, and then God called you to the mission field. I didn't know how it worked. So I was like, no, I don't think I'm called. So I went to college at Emporia State. I became a teacher, got a job at Altoona Midway, and that's where I was. And but I never lost my desire to be called. Every time a missionary come up on stage, I would just hope that they were going to say that they needed someone like me on their team, or I was just waiting for that time. I still love being in ministry. I did kids ministry since I was a kid. In Wichita, at Fredonia, I ran the slides, I taught Sunday school, I filled in for the custodian. I did every little thing like behind the scenes that I could. So I love being a part of the church community. And I had been in Fredonia for a couple of years, and I went on a missions trip with their youth group as a youth sponsor, and I went to Jamaica to an orphanage there. And I just knew that was in the needed moment that God was finally calling me. It was my first overseas missions trip. It wasn't that far, but it was still further than I'd ever been from home. And I was like, okay, God, this is it. This is the time you're going to call me in the missions. And I was devastated when I felt like God was saying, no, it's not time. And I was praying and kind of fighting with God a little bit about it. So, really, God, I want to go. I want to do something more than just be a teacher in South Kansas. And then this little boy from the orphanage had heard that we were there for a week, so we got to know some of the kids, and he heard that, "Oh, you're a teacher in America?" I said, "Yeah." "Is it true that you can't talk about Jesus in school?" I was like, "Well, I'm a public school teacher, so I guess, yeah, that's true. I can't really tell my kids about Jesus." And he's like, "Oh, wow, I need to pray for the kids in America, because they can't hear about Jesus." And I was like, oh, okay. That totally changed my mindset. I was thinking that I was just a teacher in Southeast Kansas. Yeah. But actually, no, God took me to Jamaica to call me to Altoona, Kansas to be a teacher. Yeah. And said, no, right now, this is your mission, is to just love on those kids. Because so many of them come from broken homes. So many of them needed Jesus in their lives. And I was able to, I couldn't, actually tell them about Jesus as a public school teacher, but I could show them the love of Jesus. And I could be Jesus to my coworkers, just like Pastor said. So that's what I did for 8 years in Altoona, Kansas. I absolutely loved my community working there. And then I felt this sense of God saying, you can leave after 8 years. And I was like, what does that mean, God? Leave where? I've never left Kansas in my life. I don't know what the world got me about. I prayed about it some more, and my sister was coming back from studying abroad in Paris, and something my mom had said just popped in my head. Like, well, you could move in with Hannah. That doesn't make what? But I thought about it. The more I thought about it, the more it made sense. I just sensed this need. I need to leave Kansas. It broke my heart, but I knew it was what I needed to do. So I called my sister. I said, okay, I don't know where you're going. She didn't even know what college she was going to. She was returning from studying abroad. She was getting her master's degree next, either in, I think it was at Iowa or Illinois. So I said, whichever one you choose, that's where I'm going. I'm going to move in with you. She's like, oh, great. Sounds good to me. So she eventually chose to go to Champaign, Illinois, go to the U of I and get her master's degree there. So I moved and I taught in a school in Champaign, Illinois. Talk about culture shock. Going from rural Kansas to basically inner city kind of school with like 500 kids. Whew, that was a lot. And a year into that, I felt the same kind of restlessness of like, it's time to go. God, I just got here. What are you talking about? Like, I know it's hard and I don't really like it, but I don't want to just run away because it's hard. Like, what are you doing? Prayed about it some more, and God brought to my mind several years before, I had spent a summer teaching in Italy at different summer camps. It was just for the summer with a secular organization, but I loved it. I loved the culture, loved the people. I got to stay with a host family in 2 different towns and just really lived the Italian life. And I just fell in love with it. And I really wanted to go back. And God brought that to my mind. He's like, well, you've always wanted to be a missionary. Like, yeah, I have. What are you saying, God? Well, you always want to go back to Italy. Yeah. And so he's kind of nudging me, like, okay, so I look on AWM and I find a couple in Sicily that needed someone to teach English to their kids at a refugee center. And I said, well, that sounds kind of perfect. So I decided, you know what? Why not? I put in an application to see what doors God was going to open. And God just opened door after door after door. And so I ended up in Sicily, working with a refugee ministry called Casa di Refugio. I think we have some slides of that. Yeah, I was in Caltanissetta, Sicily, so Sicily is the country, or not the country, the island at the end of the boot. And then Caltanissetta was right smack dab in the center of Sicily. And I was working with a veteran missionary couple. They'd actually helped translate a Bible. Not just helped, they did. They were the ones that translated the Bible in Papua New Guinea. And they were there for like 30, 40 years, and this was kind of their final place before they retired. Pictures. Yeah. So that's a picture from where I was living in Caltanissetta. So the Sicilian countryside, it was beautiful there. And the next slide. Just picture showing what Caltanissetta looks like.
Right. That's her.
Nope, I don't. Okay, that's later. I forget what slides are where. So that was Sicily, Caltanissetta, and I was so excited to get there. Okay, my whole life has been leading up to this. I was like 31 at the time. I'm like, okay, I know this is like my calling finally. And I had an idea in my head of what mission work would look like, because I've heard all the sermons about planting the seeds of the gospel. And I would share Jesus with them, and plant the seed, and disciple them, and then it's like watering them, and then they get baptized, and you say, hey, that's the harvest. And then if you're a really good missionary, you do that lots and lots of times, and you could come back and tell everyone how big of a harvest God gave you, and blah, blah, blah. I had in my head that's what it was going to look like. So I get there, and Jesus talked about that. Next slide. Now we get to that. He talked about this farming metaphor in Matthew chapter 13. That same day, Jesus went out of the house and sat by the lake. Such large crowds gathered around him that he got into a boat and sat in it, while all the people stood on the shore. Then he told them many things in parables, saying, a farmer went out to sow the seed. As he scattered the seed, some fell along the path, and the birds came and ate it up. So some fell on rocky places where it did not have much soil. It sprang up quickly because the soil was shallow. But when the sun scorched, and they withered because they had no root. Other seed fell among the thorns, which grew up and choked the plants. Still others, seed fell on good soil, where it produced a crop, 160 or 30 times what was sown. Whoever has ears, let him hear. And the disciples asked Jesus, what in the world does that mean? So he explains it. In verse 18, listen to what the parable of the sower means. When anyone hears the message about the kingdom and does not understand it, the evil one comes along and snatches what was sown in their heart. That is the seed sown along the path. The seed falling on the rocky ground refers to someone who hears the word and at once receives it with joy. But since they have no root, they last only a short time. When trouble and persecution comes because of this world, because of the word, they fall away quickly. The seed falling among the thorns refers to someone who hears the word, but the worries of life and the deceitfulness of wealth choke the word, making it unfruitful. But the seed falling on good soil refers to someone who hears the word and understands it. This is the one who produces a crop yielding 160 or 30 times what is sown. And if you've been in church for a while, you've probably heard this parable, and you've heard to have good heart soil. Right? That's your main takeaway is what soil are you? Make sure you listen to the word so the enemy doesn't snatch it away. Make sure you don't have rocky heart soil so that the roots can grow with a consistent time spent with the Lord. Build a relationship with him that'll last even when thorns come. And don't have thorny heart soil where the worries of this life choke out your faith. Those are all really good things to keep in mind. But I want to take this the other direction because we're Kansans and we know how farming or gardening works. When you're a farmer or a gardener and you want to plant your seed, do you go out in the field that's really hard and dry, and just toss some seeds out and hope something good happens? And you see a really weedy patch over there, like that's probably gonna be fine. You just toss your seed out. And then you find like a rock pile and you're like, oh, that looks good. Throw it out there. And then, oh, I have some seed left over. Let me throw in this nice and good, rich soil. No, that's not how it works. So, when you want to plant something, you have to work the soil first. If it's dry and rocky, you have to till it up and then get all the rocks out or put some weed killer down and kill all the weeds and all that stuff. I'm from Wichita. You can tell I don't actually have a lot of experience with this, but I lived in South Kansas long enough, I feel like I sort of kind of know how that works. But what does that look like on the mission field? When God's calling us to plant the seeds of the gospel, what happens when you're sent out to sow seeds in a foreign land? When I got to Sicily, the soil was literally and figuratively terrible. There was a literal drought, and then a spiritual drought as well. There's plenty of Catholic churches in Caldensa, but they're very poorly attended. They're more of just a relic of the past. The evangelical church I went to was having lots of drama with pastor turnover and internal squabbling, so they weren't much help. Caldensa was spiritually dry and cracked. If a farmer would want to plant seed there, all the pigeons, because there's a million pigeons in Italy and they're really annoying, they would just come and eat it right up. So nothing was going to take fruit. And on top of that, 3 weeks after I got there, one of our translators, because our main ministry to the women was teaching Italian, and one of our translators and Italian teachers, she ended up leaving. She was actually a Muslim woman, but she got really close, and she was feeling a lot of pressure from the community because she was working with us so closely, so she ended up living with her family. And then we had this influx of women coming all of a sudden, and we were down a teacher, and they say, well, you're a teacher, you can teach Italian, right? I knew about that much Italian, but I'm a teacher, and Italian's very phonetic. I at least know how to pronounce the words by that point. And some of the women coming in were like level 0. Some of them had never even been to school in the countries that they had come from. So I'm like, sure, I can do that. And so I taught them how to read. And then they asked me, what does that mean? I said, I don't know, look it up. So I get on Google Translate and we just learn together. And I just winging it. But I'm a teacher, I know how to do that. Make it up as you go along, build the plane while you're flying and all that kind of stuff. And then a couple months after that, the wife, because sweet Moroccan girl that would help us when she could, but she worked full time. So really, it was just us three. And then the wife was having health problems, and she couldn't walk from our house to the ministry center, which was downtown, like 100 stairs down. And she also didn't drive, so I was the one that had to go and keep the center running. I just got here, I don't know what I'm doing, I can't speak Italian, they don't speak Italian either, because they speak Pashto or Urdu or Moroccan was the main languages of the women. But I just, okay, I guess I'll do my best. But I didn't want to do it by myself, so my Moroccan friend helped me out as best she could, but there's only maybe a few hours a week. And I tried teaching Italian, or teaching English to the kids. And I was like, oh, I'm a teacher, I got this. But when you're dealing with a bunch of rowdy kids that don't speak any of the languages you speak, and you don't speak their language, it's just, whew, God reminded me why I left. God bless teachers. I'm so proud to have been a teacher, and I'm also so glad that God is asking me to do something different now. Full disclosure. And then I realized that, you know what? I actually don't really enjoy teaching anymore like I thought I did. So God, what is going on here? And then, on top of all of that, we're working with the Muslim community. And that soil, if we're going to go after soil metaphor, is littered with rocks and weeds called Islam. It's a religion that permeates every area of their life. They believe in a God called Allah, who is all-powerful creator of the universe, who is also loving and forgiving, which sounds kind of like our God, conceptually. But where it's different is that in Islam, you have to please Allah through your submission and good works. You have to pray 5 times a day. Our women would have counters on their fingers to make sure that they prayed the right number of prayers or something. And you hear their calls to prayer on their phones go off all the time. And my Moroccan friend was devout in her prayer. If she didn't pray, if she couldn't pray for some reason, she would make sure she did it twice later. She just felt this burden of she had to make sure she prayed 5 times a day. You give alms, which is kind of like an offering. You fast during Ramadan. And it's up to you to live a righteous life so that you can grow closer to Allah and please Him. And they acknowledge that Jesus was a person that lived on earth, but they also believe that He was just a prophet that died. And so, of course, it's totally opposite of what we believe. We believe that God is the all-powerful creator of the universe, and He's loving and forgiving, but we also know that there's no amount of good works that we can do to make Him love us more or to get to heaven. It's a never-ending, impossible task. And so we know that Jesus died to give us eternal life. He took punishment for us. And through Him, that we're forgiven and made righteous. So we meet as Muslims who believe that they have to do all these good works. And that's a rock we have to remove out of that circle. They believe the lie that Jesus was just a prophet. He was a really good man. He's not the Son of God. There's no way that He can be the Son of God. So that's a really deeply ingrained lie that they believe, a weed that we have to pull up. And then on top of that, Islam is so culturally ingrained that they can't become a Christian without renouncing their culture, sometimes giving up their family, a lot of times giving up their family, sometimes their lives. It's a serious decision that we take for granted as American Christians. To become a Christian is a serious sacrifice for them. And Christians, in their mind, they're the ones that have it wrong. They have the final word of God called the Quran. So that's just a lot of rocks and weeds and stuff that soil is it's no good when you first get there. You can't just show up and say, Jesus loves you, and then they say, oh great, let me become a Christian. It's not how it works. That's like spreading soil in the dry, barren path, and then expecting it to somehow do something. So you have to work the soil. So that's what we did. We taught Italian to the women. You can go to the next slide. So that's built instead of where there's too many cars and not enough roads, so people park on sidewalks. Next slide. Oh, there's more. I should have had this earlier. I need some slides. That's more about Mazetta. That's downtown. Here we are. Okay. So on the left, and the right, we're invite them to our Christmas program. So they get the next slide. And so we packed our ministry center with women and children, probably 80 to 100. And turns out they love Christmas just as much as we do. So we were able to present the gospel to them through the story of Jesus' birth and how God loves us and gives us good gifts. And gave us the gift of his son. We also gave them presents, and it was a good opportunity to just really make this connection and show them what Christianity and what Jesus and God, what all these things are really about. I also helped create digital resources for the people at Casa de Refugio. Our center was kind of split into two. We had the women and children side of the ministry, and they were mostly Moroccan and Arabic. And so we knew they probably spoke one of three, or sometimes more than that. One of three languages: Urdu, Pashto, those are Pakistanis, and then the Moroccans spoke Arabic. So that was pretty easy to figure out what languages they came with. But then on the other side, we had a men's ministry, and they were actual refugees that had come off the boat in Sicily, and then the government would ship them to the center of Sicily, where we were, until they could get their documents, and then most of them moved north to find work. And we had no idea where they were coming from, what languages they spoke. A lot of the countries in Africa, most of them were coming from Africa while I was there, like Western Africa, but they speak like 15 different languages in one country, depending on what tribe or culture. I don't even know, it's crazy. So I used my teacher skills, and I made this chart. So each one is a flag. Well, they have a flag from their country, and then I just looked at the top, like 4 or 5 languages in that country. And we had a website, we added a bunch of different Bible resources. We had written Bibles, audio Bibles, we had videos, we could find them, and worship songs, we could find them. And then we had QR codes, so they could just scan their language, and then that would bring up on their phone Bible resources in their language. And then also I made downloaded Bibles on like 1,000 different SD cards that we sent to an Italian missionary going to Africa. So he was able to give out those. Next slide. And this is my good friend Dee. She was our faithful worker and helper, and she was so sweet and so curious about Christianity, and really wanted to know more. And it was so fun to be able to share what I could with her. And then the wife that I worked with, she was fluent Italian, so they had some really good conversations. And Dee was also fluent Italian. She lives in Italy since she was like 10 or 11. And just watching her truly understand who God is and what God has for her has been a blessing to watch. And actually, I just talked with the wife, and she said that Dee told her, you know what, I want to know God like you do. And so I'm praying that someday she'll be open to hearing more and accepting God or accepting Jesus as her Savior. But right now, her heart's will just isn't quite ready yet. Because every heart is at a different stage of development and preparation. And we didn't have a full staff. So it wasn't just Dee that we were mentoring, it was everyone we were working with. But there's only so much we could do with 2 missionaries who were retirement age and me, a school teacher who didn't speak fluent Italian. And people in Calcutta, some of them didn't even speak Italian, they spoke Sicilian, which is a whole other language. Plus people we worked with didn't speak Italian. It was a mess. And so many days with God, why did you bring me here? I waited 30 years, 22 years from the time that you called me to be a missionary. This is what you brought me to? Like, this is a barren wasteland, and you did not train me for this, which I guess I should send the coming because that's what teachers do, right? You show up and you're like, nothing trained me for this. Same thing happened all over again, but I was in a different country. And I spent so much time by myself. I was only at the ministry center for a few hours a week, and I would just cry out to God, and I started writing poetry. And basically I became David, just pouring out myself to God, and I realized that I was actually really angry at God for putting me in that situation. Like, I'm a missionary, I'm not supposed to be angry at God. But God was showing me, like, no, it's okay. Just Give me all the emotions. Even if you're angry, don't try to hide it. God knows my heart anyway. Just give it to God. So I just gave him my anger, my frustration, and my grief. Then I started working with a counselor, and all sorts of trauma from my past was coming out of the woodwork. And God took the hot mess that was me, and he just really helped burn off all of the extra stuff that was holding me back. And he did what he does. And in those times of fire and trial, he works and he brings out the bad and helps. If you give it to him, he'll help you deal with it so that you're left with something that's so much easier to carry. So I left Sicily pretty broken and exhausted spiritually, mentally, all of it. But then in this past year, I've actually been back in the States for about a year, and God has just poured out blessing after blessing after blessing. And I was talking to one of my friends, and she's like, you know what, you sound kind of like Job. And I was like, you're right. I was sitting I felt like I was sitting in the ashes of my lifelong dream. And God has just taken everything from me in Sicily. But then now he's been pouring out blessing after blessing. I've had time with my family, I've had some friends, I've had so much support, and I'm really grateful for what God has done in my life. But it was hard still knowing that I didn't get to see the harvest in Golden Sunday. I didn't get to come back and tell everyone how many souls and how many people I saw baptized. Because what I did see was hard soil that was being worked and tilled. Seeds were being planted. Others, like with my friend Dee, were being watered continuously. And my time was just a blink of an eye to got there. Because success can't be judged by our timeline. When you plant a seed, you cover it with dirt, and for a while, you don't get to see what's happening underneath. You just have to trust that God is doing something that you can't see. And I may not have seen the harvest, but God is still working in the hearts of everyone that we talk to, all the women and children that were able to hear the gospel. And I'm praying that someday that will bear fruit. When Paul used the carbon letter for it in 1 Corinthians chapter 3, he was responding to people who were had pledged allegiance to either him or Apollos who came after him. And nope, I don't. That's my fault. I probably didn't get that on the slide. He said, what after all is Apollos? And what is Paul? Only servants through whom you came to believe, as the Lord has assigned to each to his task. I planted the seed, Apollo watered it, and God is making it grow. So neither the one who plants nor the one who waters is anything, but only God who makes things grow. The one who plants and the one who waters have one purpose, and they will each be rewarded according to their own labor. For we are co-workers in God's service, and you are God's field, God's building. So it wasn't our job to make things grow, it was our job to plant the seeds, to water them, to till up the soil. And that was my time there, just to help prepare the soil. And it was hard, dusty work. But now we're already seeing the results of that because the Italian Assemblies of God has brought in a missionary couple that are Italian, and they've already taken over. The missionaries that I work with are retired now. And Casa di Refugio is doing even better because they have Italian missionaries that are there that will be long-term, that are a young couple. They're amazing. Another, actually a Romanian missionary that was already fluent in Italian is also there now. Like God's just bringing all sorts of things together that we never could have imagined. And the wife has told me, like, I know that your time didn't feel like you did much there, but you were the bridge that helped the ministry just keep going until the Italian Assemblies of God could bring in this couple, and God just did so many amazing things. So that made it easier to look back and know that my time did have a purpose, even though at the time it did not feel like that at all. And for me, I came to realize just how much I needed a faith community, a solid faith community. I love seeing your announcements and everything you guys are doing in your community. I needed that so desperately while I was there. I didn't have that. And I met an Italian couple, an Italian missionary couple, they're American, that were in Genoa, Italy, which is in the north. And they invited me to be on their leadership team of planting a new church, Genoa International Church. And Genoa is a city of 500 professionals, students, and business people, and there's immigrants, and but less than 2% of Genoans are evangelical Christian. So they are committed to building a faith community so that everyone can hear about the love of Jesus Christ. And also, it's amazing, even in Sicily, how many people we met that we were able to share the love of Jesus with that never could have heard that in their home countries. And the same thing's going to be there in Genoa. Who knows where the people are coming from in Genoa that will be able to share the love of Jesus with them, and hopefully they can grow in that and then go back to their countries, and who knows what God can do through us in Genoa. And also, this is new, we are collaborating with Project Rescue because there is a red light district in Genoa. Prostitution is actually legal in Italy, so it's a problem there. And there's no Project Rescue yet, which is an organization that works with trafficked people. So I'm really excited that we're going to be a part of growing Project Rescue and building a relationship with the red light district as we build our church. So there's so many exciting things going on that I can't wait to get to. But when we reach heaven, God's going to say, well done, good and faithful servant, not well done, good and successful servant. Because we're just called to be faithful. And sometimes that means doing things that don't look successful in our own eyes. But when we're faithful, our time and efforts are never wasted. And when we're wandering in the wilderness, God is going to use that to bring something beautiful out of you if you let Him. God's always up to something. And I want to encourage you guys, if you are in a season right now where you feel like you're wandering in the wilderness like I was, keep pressing in. Keep giving God all of your emotions, good, bad, the ugly, because He's listening and He can help you in ways that you didn't imagine. And maybe get connected with a counselor or a therapist like I did. I was actually clinically depressed. I found out when I got back, and I'm on medication now. Thank God for medication. And in addition to counseling and helping me work through all those things that I went through. Or maybe you're feeling frustrated that you've been working with someone in your life, trying to share your faith with them, and it just feels like nothing's working. But just stay faithful with that relationship. And maybe their heart soil isn't ready yet. Keep watering, keep tilling, keep helping them pull out flies and weeds and their understanding of who God is. Because it's God's job to make things grow, not ours. We just do what we can, what God's given us in front of us, and we do the best that we can. Or maybe you're like me and you feel called to ministry, but you don't feel qualified. Trust me, if you told me 3 years ago I'd be preaching entire sermons, I would have said, no way. And now look what God's done in me. So even if you don't feel qualified, but you feel called, talk to your pastor, talk to people around you. I promise you that maybe it's not time yet, but God can use anyone, no matter where you are. So, yeah, thank you so much for listening to what I had to say. And yeah, like Pastor said, I have a little booth over there with some Italian cookies. I'd love to chat with you, give you a prayer card. And I am looking for more financial partners as well. So I don't know how Pastor does that, if they all go to the church or we can work that out later. But thank you so much, guys.